8-page agenda today. It is going to be potentially a 5 plus 6 hour hearing. We have ordered the agenda in an effort to be conscious of that. Even with that, I'm going to ask everyone to really work diligently with me, with all of us in the room, to keep within the time frame for your testimony that I give you. When you don't do that, you disrespect all of those in line behind you and all of the advocates who are here to testify in support or in opposition to other critical public policy issues lower on the agenda. Fair enough? In this committee, we work very hard to give everyone who comes, who takes the time out of your day to come and participate in this public policy process, which is your process, an opportunity to be heard. But trust me, you can make a point in a minute. Fair enough? We will adjust. We try to do two minutes, depending upon how many people queue up per item. As chair, I will take the liberty to make the decision if we're going to be able to go 1 minute or 2 minutes, again, based on the number of people who queue up and based on my commitment to keep the trains running today so we can hear all of the important updates from departments, important investment opportunities. The panels will hear from advocates and members of the public, as well as my colleagues, other fellow legislators who will have questions as panel, as committee members, and folks who are coming to provide their support. We want to thank the staff and the sergeants for their participation in today's long hearing, and we're going to go ahead and get started. We have 2 committee members who are en route, but we'll get started. The first department today we're going to hear from is the Department of Social Services, the Immigrations Branch. We're going to get an update on the Immigration Services Program, and then under the proposals for investment, we will be hearing from Senators Hueso and Pan, and perhaps others. Let's go ahead and get started with the update from the department first. I thought it was important for you guys to hear the update from the department, so we'll let them do that. So wherever you're comfortable. Thank you. Department of Social Services, hello and welcome.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair Mitchell and members. I'm Todd Bland, Deputy Director of the Welfare to Work Division at CDSS. Before I very briefly try to cover your questions on page 5, I just wanted to say how pleased we are at CDSS that the governor announced a few weeks ago that Marcela Ruiz will be taking over as the Immigration and Civil Rights Branch Chief. She will start on May 16th. We're really excited to have her, and we've already started some transition meetings with her and her esteemed predecessor, Dan Torres, who's now working in the governor's office as the Director of Immigrant Integration. On page 5, you asked first for a quick summary of what's going on in the Immigration Services Program. This program was part of the 15-16 budget, so we're in our very first year. It's designed to serve those that are eligible for deferred action under the President's order. To implement the program, we needed to find contractors who could deliver the immigration services. We had a competitive process. 78 organizations applied. 61 have been awarded contracts. The contracts commenced just this January and will run through June of 2017. The funding is divided into 5 areas, and I think your agenda does a really good job showing that allocation. The majority of the funding is going for the deferred action for childhood arrivals, but there's also funding for education outreach, naturalization assistance, legal training and technical assistance, and other immigration remedies. That's my overview for question 1. I'm happy to take further questions or move to 2.
Go ahead to question 2. Thank you.
As part of the process of getting information and being accountable, we have developed 5 separate reporting documents. Our research services and folks at DSS worked with our program staff to develop those forms and instructions, and they went out to our contractors, and the first set was due back on April 15th, and as I understand it, about 95% have turned those in. I'm sure we'll get that to 100 very soon. But this is the very first time for many contractors doing this kind of reporting reporting to a government agency. So we'll, the numbers have not even been compiled yet, so I have nothing to report to you today on the results of that, but it is a quarterly plan.
Revise.
Perhaps.
Okay.
We'll be at the very front end of first compiling, but at least I'll be able to tell you what I know at that point.
Got it.
That's where we are on those reports. Any further questions about reporting? Okay. Question 3 is an update on the unaccompanied undocumented minors program. Again, with that program and the previous program, I guess I should make at least the budget reference. Both programs are essentially current level funding budgets. We have a $15 million program on immigration services. For UUM, it's $3 million. We are in the second year with the unaccompanied undocumented minors program. We also ran a competitive process. We're contracting with 21 organizations in that program. We were able to budget for 725 clients in the first year in 14-15. Based on the experience of the average cost of the types of remedies that those children needed when they were in the United States and needing to work through the immigration process, we determined that the average cost was higher than the original $4,000, so we raised that to $5,000. So our second year contracts were at that $5,000 per client level, so we were able to serve 580. The budget continues funding at the same $3 million. That's $2.9 million in local assistance and $100,000 for the state operations at the Department of Social Services. I can also report to you that with Marcella coming on board, we will be fully staffed. I have a manager 1 leading the unit, and we actually have her 3 staff have been hired as well. Finally, on UUM, I would just say there's a slight update compared to your agenda. We've had even slightly more favorable results than shown there. Of the 185 cases where we know there's been a decision, 156 have gotten immigration status, a highly successful program, and consistent with the national norms on this, showing when children are represented, there's a very high likelihood that they will, in fact, some sort of status will be found for them, and when they're not represented, the opposite occurs. That concludes my presentation. Happy to take questions.
Senator Stone.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman.
Good morning, sir.
Thank you for your presentation. The information that you provided shows other immigration remedies that would serve almost 1,700 individuals at a cost of about $2,000 a case. Could you provide additional information as to what those other remedies are? And can you tell us what the cost components are that have led to $2,000 a case? And I see that there are some that are, much more expensive than others, and what the variance is attributable to.
Essentially, some clients, and I apologize for not having as good an answer as I should on this for you today, and I can get back to you. Some clients are eligible for the deferred action, kind of the main way the program was designed, but sometimes there are U visas and T visas and other types of remedies that are more appropriate. And part of the nature of the program is to explain to immigrants what the situation is and try to determine which remedy is best for them. I can get back to you with a little bit more detail. I apologize, I don't have more than that today.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. LAO, any comment? Finance? I'm going to hold public comment on issue 1 until we transition to issue 2, the proposal for investment, and then we'll take all public comment for the immigration branch. Seeing none, let's move on to issue 2, proposal for investment, where my colleagues, Senators Hueso and Pan, will be coming, as well as the One California Coalition.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And members of the subcommittee, it's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you for allowing me to advocate for a very important program. On behalf of the 22 members of the Latino Legislative Caucus, we respectfully request that the committee invest $40 million in the One California Immigration Services funding program. Last year, as part of the 2015-2016 state budget, the legislature and the governor took action in investing $15 million to provide grants to qualified nonprofits and legal service organizations that, with the goal of providing education, outreach, and application assistance to lawful or permanent residents eligible for citizenship and undocumented immigrants eligible for deportation release. We've seen that families are being helped under this program. We see that this program is taking very important measures at preventing poverty in our state. There are 2.5 million lawful permanent residents in California that are eligible for citizenship, but our initial investment will only allow us to reach 0.3% of this population. More needs to be done to integrate these people into our economy, into our society. So I am very proud to stand in solidarity with the Asian Pacific Islander Caucus in support of this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Senator Wade, so I just want to make sure I'm clear. The request is for an additional $25 million on top of the existing 15 for a total of 40.
That's correct.
Thank you. Senator Pan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. On behalf of the API Legislative Caucus, we're thrilled to come together again with the Latino Legislative Caucus to request the $40 million to help our immigrant communities navigate our broken immigration system. We'd like to thank Governor Brown for the $15 million he signed into the budget last year to help folks in our community who need assistance in the naturalization process and seek deferred action for childhood arrival status. There are too many in our communities who have fallen victim to notorious and other unqualified bad actors. And that's why the One California proposal is so important, to help combat these legal predators and protect potential victims who are trying to seek a better life here in California. In California, there are more than 470,000 Asian American immigrants eligible to naturalize. On top of this, Asian immigrants make up 15% of the state's undocumented residents. We know that Asian immigrants have not applied for the DACA program at the same rate as other immigrant communities. This is largely due to language, cultural barriers, and misinformation. And last year's funding was a key first step, but only represents a very small fraction of our residents' need for these services. Though $40 million will not completely meet the full needs of immigrant communities, would go a long way to reducing disparities in access to these opportunities for relief. By supporting our immigrant residents through these investments, we can significantly boost California's economy. According to the White House, implementation of the deferred action programs are estimated to generate the state as much as $27.5 billion over the next 10 years. Additionally, a recent study by the USC Center for the Study of Immigrant Integration shows that half of our eligible residents were to naturalize. Over the next 10 years, California would see an increase of $17.7 billion from immigrant earnings. So it is critical that California continue to build on last year's investment to One California. This transformational impact on individuals and families with each new work permit, each new citizen is life-changing, and will see great benefits to our communities and economy. I respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We appreciate the members representing the Latino and Asian Pacific Islander Caucus for participating in the panel. Thank you very much, colleagues. And the representative from One California?
Yes, good morning, Madam Chair and members. Ronald Coleman here on behalf of the California Immigrant Policy Center and also the One California Coalition. In California, immigrants are a major driving force behind our economy, but while they contribute greatly to California's prosperity, they absolutely have unequal footing in our society because of the vulnerability caused by their immigration status. And as non-citizens, they are subject to deportations that tear communities apart and have long-term debilitating effects on families and our communities. From personal testimony we've already heard this year, we know that there's a farm worker who has access to health care and can now work off-season. A young woman who went from working 3 jobs who is now able to switch to 1 job and able to pursue an education at the same time. Sisters who became citizens after 27 years with a fee waiver assistant. And clients with disabilities who are supported through initial rejections through the U.S. Immigration Services Agency. $15 million was a key investment for last year, but California cannot stand to fail this community by not taking advantage of maximizing this investment at such a critical time. These types of investments will go a long way to reducing poverty and improving family stability, while also boosting security and educational achievement for all of our state's future workers and leaders. California must recognize that immigrants and their families are a key component to state growth and prosperity. And while Washington continues to equivocate, California can and must do more to reduce the harmful impact to these families, and for that reason, we ask you to support the expanded investment. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Witnesses in support, excuse me, not witness support, this isn't a bill. Public comment on issues 1 and 2, the overview as well as the investment proposal. Let me see how many folks are coming up. And I'm going to say 1 minute each person. Thank you very much.
Madam Chair and members, Michael Pimentel here on behalf of Los Angeles Mayor Eric Garcetti in strong support for the proposed increase for the One California Immigration Services Program. As you may know, Los Angeles is home to one of the largest immigrant populations in the country. The city has great need for applicants seeking deferred action, and we have an estimated 350,000 legal permanent residents who are eligible to apply for citizenship. We want to thank the Latino and API Legislative Caucuses for their support and look forward to working with them to secure this funding increase. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next witness, 1 minute.
Hi, good morning. My name is Joseph Vigela on behalf of CHIRLA, the Coalition for Human Immigrant Rights of Los Angeles. We see this initiative as being an anti-poverty initiative. A little bit of example, we have one case recently in which one individual was seeking DACA relief. Unfortunately, he had some health problems, and due to that and to the cost of the legal application, he put his application on hold for several months. This initiative was able to help him apply for DACA, and for those reasons, we strongly support the increase in funding, and we thank the Latino Caucus and API Caucus for prioritizing. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Next witness, please.
Noé Paramo, representing California Rural Legal Assistance Foundation. We thank the administration for $15 million. We asked for $40 million for this upcoming budget year. This money will go a long ways to helping our communities, particularly in the Central Valley that's been impacted by the drought. This will really enhance the economic security that we have in these communities. And we also, on behalf of the Having Our Say Coalition, made up of groups of communities of color across the state, to support this proposal. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next witness.
Sandra Palacios with the California Catholic Conference. As you know, the Catholic Church has a longstanding history in support of immigrants in our communities, and therefore we feel this additional funding will help not only stabilize but also increase the success of a lot of our community members, and as well as unite families. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next witness.
Daniela Tena from Ultimate Health Services. We are a federally qualified health center serving the Los Angeles and Orange County areas, and we are in support of the increased funding to the One California Fund. From a healthcare perspective, we feel that this would be an increase for healthcare access. Through the deferred action, a lot of more individuals will be able to access Medi-Cal if they meet income criteria, as well as insurance through their employer. So we strongly urge you to support this increase. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members of the committee. I'm Santosh Siram Santana, representing the California Asian and Pacific Islander Budget Partnership, and we're in strong support of the expansion and investment in this key immigrant program. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Lynn with the Southeast Asia Resource Action Center. We're in support of this budget proposal in large part because some of our partners in the Central Valley as well as in Long Beach have noted that it's only through culturally competent, linguistically competent access that some people have been able to naturalize and access these services. So for example, some people have waited decades, and it's only through this type of support that people are able to be reached. Thank you.
Thank you. Next witness.
Good morning, Lisa Rodriguez with the Gualco Group on behalf of Catholic Charities in support.
Thanks.
Mike Carroll with the Western Center on Law and Poverty, also in support.
Thank you.
Jeanette Sanipatin on behalf of MALDEF, the Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund, also in support of this expanded investment. We definitely think that California needs to be ready in light of the pending Supreme Court decision that we're expecting in June, where potentially 1 million more immigrants may be work authorized, and the expanded investment would at least help ramp up and build that infrastructure to ensure that we're ready to help those immigrants and those families obtain their legal status.
Thank you very much. Colleagues, thank you very much, Mr. Coleman. Colleagues, we'll hold this item open. We've been joined by the other members of our committee, and I'll just share with everyone that we're going to hear today from various human services. We'll hear various human services issues, primarily from 3 departments: Department of Social Services, the Department of Aging, and the Department of Community Services and Development. With that, we will move on to Department of Social Services Supplemental Security Income State Supplemental Payment, SSI, SSP.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. Pete Chervenko with the Department of Social Services. Thanks for the opportunity to be here today.
Good morning. Thank you for being here.
Before you. The sergeant is handing out a PowerPoint for you. I promise not to read every slide in it, but it's relevant to what was requested in the agenda, which also does a good job of laying out two other sub-programs on page 7 within the SSI-SSP program. Very quickly, SSI-SSP, obviously it's a monthly cash benefit to enable age blind and disabled people to meet their basic living expenses. The SSI portion is a federally funded portion, and the SSP is the state-funded portion from the State General Fund. There's 1.3 million people served in the program, and again, as pointed out on page 7 of your agenda, there are two sub-programs within this that serve 15,000 cases and 375 cases respectively. The PowerPoint, page 3, gives you a good visual of the caseload over time for the last 13 years. We have actual data there through July of 15, which is the data used to construct the governor's budget. And it shows you roughly what the caseload in the dotted blue line was projected to be in the budget bill. So slightly slower growth than previously estimated as reflected in the governor's budget. But we're talking about very marginal decimals of changes. In that. Page 4 of the PowerPoint displays the budget for you. Nearly a $10 billion program. This program is operated at the state with less than one person. We pay the federal government to administer this program on our behalf, as it's basically a state supplementary payment to the federal payment. So they do all of the eligibility, any overpayment collections, all of that. They cut the checks, and we pay them roughly $189 million projected in budget year for that purpose. So we want to thank them for the partnership in administering that. I will not talk through the slide on page 5, but for your reference, we are required by federal law to have a maintenance of effort level of spending, so there's a minimum grant at which California cannot go below in the SSP portion of the program. And we have been at that level for a number of years as a result of budget reductions. Page 6 is some statistics about what those payment standards are, depending on whether you're an individual or a couple. And there's actually 20 different payment standards, so there's a fairly complex set of budget tables that go behind some of these. The bottom is maybe the most important for the conversation today. Federal cost of living adjustments, or COLAs. The COLAs affect the SSI, or federally funded portion, and state COLAs have historically adjusted either the whole or part of the overall payment. Question 1 in your agenda is answered by page 7 here. This is a roughly 8-year look back at the changes in grants for the program. It shows you the SSI amount of the payment, the SSP portion of the payment, the total payment, and the value of any COLA, and the COLA percentages are on the far right for you. Probably the easiest way to explain this chart is that CPI is the Consumer Price Index. That's the federal measure for adjusting the federal portion. And anywhere that you see CNI, or California Necessities Index, that's the state index used for the state portion of the program. And you can see at the beginning of this chart that the CNI COLA was suspended in 2008 and 2009. There were some grant outright reductions in July and November of 2009 as we went through difficult state budgets. And this year in the governor's budget, we have proposed a California Necessities Index adjustment of 2.96% for the SSP portion of the grant. Roughly, and to start January 1 of 17, the half-year value of that is just over $40 million in the governor's budget. Page 8 is identical information, but for couples instead of individuals. And there's more information, again, redundant on page 9 of your agenda. And then the last thing is also informational on page 10 for you. This is what's referred to as the SSI-SSP cash out, where the program relates to the CalFresh program, or nationally known as Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. Many years ago, the state added $10 to the SSI-SSP grant in lieu of all of those people having to apply for food stamps at the time. That has continued to be the case in the program, but folks often ask whether we may be better off cashing out of that and allowing people to apply. There are winners in that scenario, there are losers in that scenario, and there are people unaffected by that scenario. And the federal government has been clear with us that it's an all or nothing proposition. Either we cash everybody in or everybody is cashed out. We can't just cash in the winners. So it's been complicated, and there's been a multi-year look at this. County welfare directors and a number of advocates are looking at this. Our department continues to look at this and discuss with the federal government what options there may be. But this is mostly informational for you. There's no proposal on this issue before the committee this year.
So can you give us a general example of who the losers could potentially be?
Sure.
If we were in lieu of the $10 cash out to allow them to qualify for CalFresh?
Sure.
Because that's a scenario I can't come up with.
So I don't have the exact numbers in front of me, but let me.
Give me an example of a scenario.
As an example. So different programs calculate eligibility on a different basis. For SSI, SSP, they're looking at the individual or the couple in a married situation. But for CalFresh, they look at an overall household. So the impact of making everybody eligible for CalFresh is that suddenly under one roof, you are adding people into a household that previously weren't calculated. So the amount of the CalFresh benefit that they get could negatively impact everybody else living under that roof.
If they receive some other kind of public benefit.
If they, just based on the way that the SSI SSP grant is calculated. And in our analysis, we think roughly, because of that, just the calculation change alone of whether you're under one roof or looked at individually, we think roughly 14,000 households would be ineligible for the program at all, newly ineligible at all. And we think there are roughly 140 minus 14, 126,000 households that would see a reduction in the overall CalFresh contribution to that household under the roof. So the impact to those households, let me say it differently to sound more positive, we think there's roughly 500,000 households that will win, which sounds great, except that the amount that they gain in a CalFresh benefit above the $10 is relatively small across all of those households. But the impact for households now being looked at under an entire roof, they lose a lot more than the winners win in that scenario. And that's the dilemma that we have. It's a benefit to a lot of people, but it's a small benefit, and the harm to the fewer people impacted is much greater. And that's the dilemma we've been struggling with. I've been involved since 2007 trying to look at this issue and how to solve it. So it's longstanding. And it's a result of the federal law for the program.
Senator Monty.
Just on that example, this kind of dilemma, are there any other states that do it a different way that we could learn from?
We are very lonely across the country. As a result of the decision in 1974, when folks had this, California remains the last state in the country to be cashed out.
And so others have either have fewer losers, more winners, or they've refashioned their system in terms of what income in the household they calculate?
So when SSP was created, states had a choice. They could either let people apply for CalFresh, or they could give everybody the $10 in lieu of that. California made the second choice. Everybody else made the first. So they didn't have losers because nobody was getting anything at the time.
Got it. So it was based on our choice then. Senator Stone.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a quick question. Is it safe to assume that SSI and SSP are non-taxed to the beneficiaries?
For different purposes, yeah. For federal income tax purposes, yeah, I believe it's considered disability income. Yeah.
They are taxed.
No.
They're not taxed.
Sorry, I'm wrong. I apologize. Wrong program. Yes, you're correct. They're not taxed.
They're not taxed.
Okay.
They're not taxed.
Disability.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah.
Sorry. Different program. I apologize.
Okay. No, thank you for clarifying that.
Quick question for me. What was magical about March 1983? I mean, was that,
Federal law, I couldn't tell you.
and so that's not within our power to make any adjustment.
That's correct.
So I know you went briefly over at slide 5 over the maintenance of effort.
So we do have a choice in that regard.
Okay.
Because the maintenance of effort can either be looked at as a individual or couple's payment standard, and the amount that they get cannot go below that level, or the state could take a one-year transition to what's called the total expenditure method, that we would maintain state spending at that amount, and if the caseload grew, everybody's grants would continue to shrink. And that's a choice that California does have. In either case, the dollar value that we're spending is at the floor of the total expenditure method. We've chosen as a state to remain at the payment standard MOE. So as caseload grows, nobody has a grant reduced to pay those new
For the other
cases,
people.
and that's where we are today.
Got it. LAO? Nothing? Finance? Okay, we've got a panel of advocates who are going to come up to respond. We're going to talk about the SSI advocacy, the issues that are raised on page 9 of the agenda. We're going to have the senior analyst from the Human Services Agency in San Mateo County, Edwin Chan, and Leticia Colchada from the Homeless Initiative Team with LA County. And we're going to ask the department to, well, I guess not, huh? If LAO would swing around, I'd appreciate that. Got it. And I realize I got ahead of myself. There is a question on the agenda for the department, so let's hear from the advocates, and I'll come back to you, and you can either respond on page 10 of the agenda. We want to hear about what you're doing to ensure that all eligibles are actually applying for SSI. That's a critical issue as we look at homelessness and stuff.
I think our county colleagues are best equipped to do this.
Oh, okay.
But let me say, we view SSI SSP as a fundamental part of our social safety net. We think it's a really important program. In the subset of the SSI SSP program, for years, our department operated what was known as the CAPI advocacy program. And we think to the extent that folks are federally eligible for SSI SSP, that's where they should be directed. So we're very supportive of efforts in this regard.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chan.
Thank you, Chair Mitchell and honorable members of the committee. My name is Edwin Chan. I serve as the senior analyst at San Mateo County Human Services Agency. And thank you for allowing me to testify today about our SSI advocacy program. And we are a medium-sized county in the Bay Area, and we have 2 dedicated staff members that does nothing but help our clients apply for SSI. About 90% of their work is helping them with intake application, and about the rest of 10% is helping them with the appeals process if their applications is denied. We have a direct referral process where our eligibility worker, if they make a determination that someone could be eligible for SSI, they'll make a direct appointment with our staff, and we'll sit down with them and go through the application process. And what we do is very similar to what we do at the County Veterans Office, where we help veterans apply for VA. In this case, we help them apply for SSI. We see a lot of value in this work because we are serving our most vulnerable population. A lot of these clients have literacy challenges. Some are blind, some are homeless, some have mental health barriers. And I brought with me the actual paper application that someone has to fill out. I went through this myself. If I were to do this, it would take me a while and have a graduate degree, let alone our clients doing this on their own. Is a very daunting task. In terms of outcomes for our clients, we definitely see a positive outcome. An individual who is single could get $850 a month financial assistance. That same person receiving general assistance will get around $340 or $350 a month, and maybe additional $197 on CalFresh benefits. So together, they will get around $300 more in financial benefit. And with this population, every dollar counts. Last year, our program, we saw around 300 clients, and we were able to successfully help around 60 of them secure SSI benefits. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much. Ms. Colchada.
Good morning, Madam Chair and members. My name is Leticia.